This is Monday Night Talk with your host, Kevin Tocci.
I'm not Kevin Tocci. I'm Christine James here, but Monday Night Talk Show host Kevin Tocci is here, and we're back for round 2 of our political forums. And here with me is Charles Mathewson as well, asking questions, and Amy Leonard back again to be WATD's own Vanna White. Hi there, Amy. She's doing the green, the red, and the yellow to let our candidates know what's going on when it comes to time. Now, the 2 candidates here, the 2 Republicans that are running for the position of State Attorney General, we've got Dan Shores and we've got Jay McMahon. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
It's a great race, and I know this, I'm not trying to sound sexist or clothes, but for the whole season, these are the 2 best dressed candidates that we've had here. Do you agree, gentlemen?
Yeah, we got video to prove it.
There you go. And we're all dressed like bums. But anyway, this
Don't say that. You guys look great.
Thank you.
We look good for radio.
Yeah, it's good. That's why we work in radio. Anyway, great evening. A lot of good issues to talk about. This is a race where we're going to have some great questions because I don't think there's been a Republican in this office for maybe 50 years.
Correct.
Something like that. Okay. So we're sticking with the same format. We're having opening and closing statements. We chose the order just a few minutes ago to the official WATD newsroom koozie. We'll have a round of questions from the reporters as well as the lightning round. The lightning round is either yes or no, and yes or no means yes or no without a big, monologue or soliloquy or explanation, or 2 sentences. When we find people have trouble with that, that's why we do the lightning round. That's our favorite part. If we have time, we'll ask each other to ask each other. We'll give you a chance to ask each other a question, but we'll try to get a lot of issues in here tonight, and we're looking forward to starting this. So we just chose the order moments ago. We're going to start with opening statements. We'll begin with Jay McMahon, and then we'll go to Dan Shores. Jay, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, South Shore and Marshfield. Good to be here with you and at this debate. My name is Jay McMahon. On the ballot, I'm James R. McMahon III. My name is on the top. I'm running for Massachusetts Attorney General because we can do so much better here in Massachusetts than this left-wing liberal political activist, Maura Healey. At no time in the history of the Commonwealth have we had an Attorney General who was such a political activist, who would actually ignore our public safety and trample the most basic civil rights of our citizens for mere political expediency. I'm a lifelong resident of the Commonwealth, father of now 4 children, and we live in the town of Bourne. I'm an attorney, constitutional conservative, a gun owner, and a Second Amendment advocate. I have my undergrad from Southeastern Massachusetts University, which is now UMass Dartmouth. I have a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration where I studied corporate business management. Prior to becoming an attorney, I had 12 years in corporation management. I was with Cape Cod Bank and Trust, Scott Taylor Oil Company, and Cape Cod Hospital, where we had several thousand employees. Prior to all that, I had served 6 years in law enforcement on Cape Cod. To all police officers and firefighters and EMS, all first responders, I salute you for your service to your communities and holding the thin blue line. I've also served 6 years in the military with the Massachusetts Army National Guard. I was a 2nd lieutenant in the military police. To all veterans and former military, I salute you, honorable men and women, and I thank you for your service to the nation. We are the home of the free because of you, the brave. I'm the only candidate running for Attorney General who can say that they have law enforcement background, military background, and corporate business management experience. For the past 30 years, since 1988, I have been self-employed trial attorney in the general practice of law. I've had thousands of cases, and all have been before government boards.
Thank you very much. I know you're very passionate about what you say. If you want to get more of that in at your final statement, you can do that too. But that was the 2-minute. Let's go to Dan Shores now.
Hello, South Shore. My name is Dan Shores, and I'm running for the office of Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I was born in Boston. I grew up on the South Shore in Weymouth and Carver. I'm from a blue-collar family on the South Shore. My dad was a football coach at Silver Lake, and then he started a logging business down in southeastern Massachusetts. I grew up, again, in a blue-collar family. I worked with my dad in the woods in southeastern Massachusetts, felling white pine trees. That's where I got my start. I wanted to broaden my horizons, and I applied to college. I earned a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of New Hampshire. I financed my own education. And I also became interested in the law, and I'm a proud graduate of the Georgetown University Law Center in Washington, D.C. I was a member of the Law Review at Georgetown, and I was a member of the editorial board of the Law Review at Georgetown, and I financed my own legal education as well. I worked at 2 firms in Washington, D.C. as a litigator in highly complex, some multi-billion-dollar cases in Washington, D.C., and as primarily intellectual property law matters. I was down in Washington for about 13 years, and I came back home. I decided after 13 years to return to Massachusetts, and it was because it was during the middle of the Obama administration, and I saw the consistent undermining of law enforcement, the slow economic growth. I wanted to make a difference, and I decided to move back home and run for the United States Congress in 2014. That's exactly what I did. I'm a Republican, a lifelong Republican. I fell short in the primary. I ran as a Reagan Republican. That's who I am. I fell short in the primary, but I like to say I won because I met my wife, Lindsay, during the campaign. So that's a little bit of my background. You can learn more about me from looking at the website. But I'm running for the office of Attorney General because the office of Attorney General has become so political. We have a left-wing activist in the office of Attorney General, and we need to get politics out of the Attorney General's office and return it to what its true purpose is, and that's to enforce our laws to protect our people. I'm sure that folks that are listening right now will learn more about myself, learn more about the campaign as we go forward, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Dan Shores with his opening statement. Let's go now to Kevin Tocci, your questions for the candidates.
All right. Well, the first question I'll ask is, how important is transparency to you, especially when it comes to the AG's office? We'll start with you, Dan.
Well, transparency is critical, particularly when it comes to the Attorney General's office. There's a national organization called the Center for Public Integrity. The Center for Public Integrity, it's a national organization. And they gave Massachusetts, in terms of an overall integrity rating, a D+. They gave the Massachusetts an F in transparency. They also gave Massachusetts an F in judicial accountability. So Massachusetts has some serious issues. And if any office needs to be transparent, that's the Attorney General's office. Now, I've proposed in this race, and I stand by it, and I think it's something that's very important. We need to form underneath the Attorney General's office a Bureau of Public Integrity. And that Bureau of Public Integrity will be responsible not only for transparency, but it will also be responsible for holding our public officials accountable. If there's any act of public corruption that occurs in this Commonwealth, whether it be from a Democrat or Republican, those individuals need to be held accountable. We have a Secretary of State. We have a Secretary of State who used his own staff in order to do things for his campaign. And I'm sorry.
Thank you. I know.
There you go. The time limit.
I know it's tough. It's at 1 minute. Jay, same question.
Okay. Well, transparency is doing what you say you're going to do and saying what you're going to do. In other words, being fair with the people, being open and honest with them. So if we're going to do something, for instance, if we're going to have a position at a particular, like for instance, sanctuary cities, and we're going to put an end to sanctuary cities, being honest about it and going straight forward on it is something we need to do. Now, Maura Healey doesn't do that. Maura Healey right now is operating her office as if Massachusetts was already a sanctuary state, but she's not transparent at all. For instance, she issued her infamous gun enforcement notice in July of 2016. She stated her reason was to get guns off the street. No guns got off the street because of that. It only affected legal people because people who are illegal with guns are going to disobey the law no matter what. So, I'm going to be transparent. People are going to know why I'm doing what I do when I do it.
Thank you very much. That was Jay McMahon. A question now for Charles Mathewson for the candidates.
Jay, on your website, you are seen with a Make America Great Again poster. You seem to be pro-Trump. Does that help or hurt you in Massachusetts?
It helps me tremendously, and I'll explain why. As you know, our governor, Charlie Baker, won in 2014 by 40,000 votes. He had one opponent. However, Donald Trump, in the primary, in the presidential primary, against 13 opponents, he got more votes in the primary than the governor got in the 2014 election. This is what that tells me. The voters are out there, but they have to be passionate about the issues. In 2014, I'll bet no one here could know or remembers what the issues were, let alone who the Republican opponent was in 2014 against Maura Healey. I could say who it was, but that would be just history. What I'm saying is that the votes are out there, but the passion has to be for the issues. And the gun owners who slept through 2014 are wide awake and ready to go against Maura Healey, and they're going to return the favor, and they're 600,000 strong here in Massachusetts.
Okay, same question for Dan.
Dan, you've said you're not, quote, overtly Trumpian. Does that help you or hurt you in Massachusetts?
Well, let me just clarify, okay? I said I didn't overtly support the president. And the reason why is because every time when I first started to see President Trump, or at that time candidate Trump, work the crowd and give his speeches. I remember now, I had just run for the United States Congress. And when I watched what he did and watched his message, I think people have a difficult time getting over the orange hair, but I think his message was very strong. And so I would go into my local Republican town committee and say, did you see Trump's speech? And there was a major pushback from the activists, the Republican activists, that wanted different candidates. And so he was a candidate that sort of came out of nowhere. He was a disruptor. And so that's why I say I did not overtly support him, because there were folks in the Republican Party that pushed very strongly back against him. Now, he is the president of the United States. I voted for President Trump. He is the president of the United States. I respect the office of the president of the United States. But when it comes to the Attorney General's office, we have to be worried about less about politics and more about what happens right here in Massachusetts. So irregardless who the president of the United States is, as the next Attorney General, I will be looking out for the interests of the people of Massachusetts first. If the president of the United States does something against Massachusetts, no matter who it is, I will push back very strongly against that president. But I certainly won't be filing 40 to 50 lawsuits like the president Attorney General, and we have a very, very serious problem there.
Okay. Love to push that bell. Okay, you finished? Any follow-up questions?
No.
Okay, let me start with, this is a two-part question. One, do you think the average voter in Massachusetts knows the difference between the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney? Jay?
Well, certainly when I'm out on the stump, they certainly know it, because we talk about the problems and the issues with the marijuana issue, recreational marijuana, and so they know who Andrew Lelling is. And so we do talk about that. They also ask, where my position is with Andrew Lelling. And so from what I can see, or at least the people who are coming to my events do know.
Okay, and here's part two, and this is the part about, we usually don't talk about constituent services in a job like yours, but for a story that we've been following here on WATD since 2004, and that's the disappearance of Maura Murray, the young woman from Hanson who was a nursing student who disappeared in New Hampshire. Now, her father, Fred Murray, who's been on the air here numerous times in all those years, told me that last year on the 13th anniversary of her disappearance after an accident up in New Hampshire, there was a lot of press. It was on the front page of the Globe. He got a phone call from Maura Healey saying that she would help him. He's trying to get the FBI involved in this case. They haven't been able to do that. And even though it's a cold case in New Hampshire, but he's trying to get some help here in Massachusetts. Maura Healey told him that she would help him. I said, can I go with this story? He said, I want to wait for her to call me back. She never called him back. I talked to him again just a couple of months ago, did an interview with him. I said, has Maura Healey ever called you back? She said she was going to help you, and he said no. So I called her office twice. Neither phone call has been returned. So here, for one of the oldest cold cases here in Massachusetts, Maura Murray missing in New Hampshire, a little bit of jurisdictional question, but the family needs help. They're reaching out for it, and they're not hearing anything from Maura Healey. Would you help Fred Murray's family try to find their daughter, find out what happened to her?
My heart breaks for Fred Murray's family. My family was also involved in a death that was in New Hampshire, a child who was taken from a condo complex about 10 years ago. And the McCarthy family, I'm related to the McCarthy family on Cape Cod.
I remember that.
Yes, well, we've got a problem with New Hampshire because we've had a private investigator look into it, and they said clearly it is not an accidental death. It was a murder, and we're doing all we can to try to get the coroner in New Hampshire to reverse his findings. He won't do it. So would I help would I help Fred and his family? Oh, absolutely I would, because I'm going to be doing something more, something a little closer to me as well. So I even have a stake in this. So the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Same question. First of all, Dan, do you think most people here in Massachusetts, just your average everyday voter, know the difference between the AG and the U.S. Attorney?
I'm not sure that they do. And if folks are listening and are a little confused, I'll just give a little explanation. The Attorney General is a constitutional office. It's a separate constitutional office set up under our Constitution that John Adams wrote. It's the oldest Constitution in the world, and still in effect, believe it or not. Here in Massachusetts, we are the home of the oldest Constitution still in effect in the world. And they're a separate constitutional office under the state constitution. The governor is one, the Attorney General is another, and then there's Secretary of State, Treasurer, et cetera, et cetera. So the Attorney General doesn't answer to the governor. The Attorney General doesn't answer to the Secretary of State. The Attorney General answers to the people and to the law. So that's one thing that's very clear. Mm-hmm. Now, a U.S. attorney is a federal attorney from a federal litigator, federal attorney that has a different jurisdiction than the state attorney general. So that's like very brief, but that's the sketch. There are differences, but I don't think most people recognize that. If you can think of it this way, the people in Massachusetts. Well, I didn't get a chance to answer the second question. I didn't talk that long.
I'm going to give you another minute for the second
thank
one.
You, thank you. All right. I'm a little confused on the rules, but
that's okay.
All right,
that's okay, because this is part 2. Now you get another minute. So, do you want me to repeat the question about what happened with Maura Murray?
I've got it.
Yeah, I'm sure you're probably familiar with the story. Maura Healey said she would help, and no.
So this
no
is
answer.
about. Well, first of all. It's horrible. I mean, these missing persons cases and human trafficking and murder and just some people in this world. There is evil in this world, and it's on the part of law enforcement to root out that evil and to bring those evil to justice, and then also to protect our innocent people. So it's a horrible story, and my heart goes out. And absolutely, I mean, that's a top priority. If someone especially if you give your word, but anybody that's missing or anyone that's hurt or anyone that has a serious problem like that, as the Attorney General, I would make an extra effort in order to make sure that right is done. Now, this Attorney General spends most of her time. I'm sure the reason why she isn't helping in this and many other areas is because she's too busy pursuing a political agenda. She's got over 40 or 50 lawsuits against President Trump. That takes a tremendous amount of energy. If she really cared about the people of Massachusetts, she'd be helping Maura Murray, and she'd also be working to defeat this opioid crisis where deaths have tripled under her watch.
Thank you very much. Let me have you, again, one more quick question. Do you think that the State Attorney General's office, and this is a 30-second, only takes cases that are slam dunks? Jay?
Well, it would seem that way, especially when they thought they had a slam dunk with Tim Cahill, with her predecessor, with Martha Coakley, and it wasn't quite as easy as they thought it was. I mean, they got a hung jury. And but does she do that? I think she does. I think she's more concerned about her image because she's made it very clear. She may be the AG now. She doesn't want to stay the AG. She wants to move on and become governor.
Okay, what do you think? 30 seconds. Does she only take slam dunks?
I actually disagree because she took the immigration ban. She took that case and it lost 9-0 in the Supreme Court. I think she has flawed judgment, quite frankly. You have resources in the office. There's 200 attorneys in that office, and you need to use the Massachusetts, the $50 million we put taxpayer dollars every year we put in the AG's office. You have to use those funds and those resources wisely. She's using them on frivolous, politically motivated lawsuits while people are dying here in Massachusetts, and that's wrong. I don't care what party you're from. That's wrong.
Okay, thank you, Dan Shores. Let's go over to Kevin Tocci now. Questions for the candidates.
I'm going to pick right up what Dan was mentioning in regards to the opioid epidemic. Does the Attorney General's office do enough when it comes to the fight against the opioid epidemic, whether it's education or seeking legal action against Big Pharma? If not, what are you willing to do once you take office? We'll start with Dan.
No, the Attorney General's office doesn't do nearly enough. This is the scourge of our time. As I indicated, we have, under Attorney General Healey, there have been an average of 1,800 deaths in Massachusetts due to overdose during her tenure. That's triple the same amount during the 4-year period preceding her. So deaths have tripled under Attorney General Healy. And again, she's using the resources of the office to pursue these political, her own political agenda, to advance not only the left wing, but also herself. And it's so fundamentally wrong. My plan for opioids is to be very aggressive, to educate our kids, to get into our schools with an aggressive speakers program, to say, do not open this door to hell in the first place. With these drugs, it could be one strike and you're out, or one strike and you're dead. Educate the kids. Prevention, very, very important. The Attorney General's office can play a significant role there. With respect to health care, if you fall into the trap of addiction in the first place, you need to be directed to the right resources. The last thing, law and order, the Attorney General's office needs to crack down on drug traffickers, the kingpins, with the full force and weight of the law, and I pledge that I will do that if I'm elected.
Thank you.
So my follow-up, when you talk about education,
yes,
and it's a very quick answer. How young? Give me either a grade or an age where education should start as far as getting the word out about opioid epidemic,
as soon as
about
possible.
drug addiction.
As soon as possible.
Is that kindergarten? Is that first grade?
6 years old.
6 years old?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Well, when I first announced I was going to run in July of 2017, I issued my campaign literature, and on the back of it, I have my 3-point plan. I've run this besides law enforcement people to see if it would work, and they told me it would. This Attorney General office won't do it because she won't cooperate with the feds, but my 3-point plan goes like this. First of all, we need successful and effective rehabilitation. We don't have that now. If you're sentenced to a program, a government program, because you were convicted of a drug charge, that program is a 99% failure, and that's unacceptable here in Massachusetts, where we are the medical capital of the world. Number 2, drying up the source. We need to have joint state and federal task forces because the feds know how that stuff is getting into Massachusetts and New England. Maureen Healy won't do that. She's operating her office as if Massachusetts is a sanctuary state, and she's not cooperating with federal law enforcement assets. I would do what you already think should be done, joint federal state task forces. And the third is extreme prosecution, going to the max against these purveyors of poison.
Bell's getting a workout.
I know, we got passionate candidates.
But
it's great.
Just a follow-up that I asked Dan, and that is age or grade where education should start when it comes to it. Quick answer.
The age is they're already doing the programs, and they are doing them in middle school.
But I'm asking you, your opinion, if you could change it, if you're not agreeable to middle school, do you think it should be younger? Should it be 5th grade? Should it be somebody who's 7 or 8 years old?
No, they've done studies right now, and people, the children who are getting, I would say, as I said, middle school.
Okay.
Okay. Charles Mathewson, question for the candidates.
To keep on that subject, and I know, Dan, you lost a son.
Jay did.
I mean, Jay did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I've done a lot of reporting on the opiates. My buddy here, Kevin, asked as part of his question the possible responsibility of Big Pharma. Would you, as Attorney General, institute legal action against pharmaceutical companies so that they could reimburse our state and our municipalities for the billions of dollars that they're spending to counteract the opiate crisis?
It's for me.
Sure.
Okay, well, first of all, anyone, as a general matter, anyone who contributes to putting this poison onto our streets, causing addiction and causing death, needs to be looked at in terms of accountability. When you talk about the major drug manufacturers and the manufacturers of opioids, I've said throughout the campaign that is really the source of a lot of folks who become addicted start off with these painkillers. And so we need to look at the conduct of the drug manufacturers to determine if they're pushing this too heavily onto our people. And we see reports, and I hear anecdotally, and I see other reports that indicate someone breaks an arm, they get such an overprescription, 90 oxycodone, for example, for a broken arm. You hear all these different reports, and that needs to be looked at. And if that's causing addiction to our people and hurting our people, then they should be held accountable. It doesn't matter if it's a kingpin drug dealer, a legal drug dealer, or if it's somebody who's out there that has a pharmaceutical product that causes harm to our people, and they're out and interacting with the doctors and pushing them to overprescribe, that all needs to be looked at. That all needs to be, and the law needs to be enforced against everybody.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Jay, would you take legal action against Big Pharma?
All right, well, let me explain to the extent that Big Pharma is culpable, because this is what's important. Big Pharma produces these opiates. However, you cannot get an opiate from Big Pharma except from a physician. So to the extent that the physicians are being pressured by Big Pharma or incentives, and that's basically what it is, it's incentives. In other words, if you reach a certain goal of prescribing opiates to your patients, you get certain things like trips to Bahamas, a trip to the Bahamas, and those sort of things. So to that extent, they're creating incentives which are impairing the physician's ability to prescribe correctly. On the other hand, the physicians are the ones who are prescribing these. Now, to the extent that they know that these are addictive and habit forming, the physicians are also responsible. Now, we have a Dr. Brown who was in Sandwich, who is now in Danbury, courtesy of the feds, because he was over-prescribing. If you wanted to an opiate, you asked Dr. Brown, and he gave it to you.
Yes or no? Is there a condition under which you would initiate as Attorney General legal action against companies that produce opiates?
Yes, there is a condition, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Did you want to ask Dan that question about that?
I think you said
Okay.
that conditionally would, yes, you would initiate legal
Yes.
action.
Okay.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Anyone who's culpable, absolutely. It doesn't matter if you're a criminal or you have an FDA-approved drug.
Okay.
As I mentioned
To
earlier,
contribute.
in this race, there has not been a Republican in this office, I think, for 50 years. Now, we've had Republican governors. We haven't had a congressman in I don't know how many decades. But Massachusetts, even if most of their state reps and state senators are Democrats, they tend to like law enforcement. You know, you'll have sheriffs, district attorneys. Why do you think there has been no Republican attorney general in this office in 50 years, Jay?
Well, if you go back to when Frank Bellotti was the Attorney General, he was there for 12 years.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. I mean, he was a law enforcement guy. He did his best to get politics out of that office. And when he left 12 years, that office was better off than when he first went in. So when people saw the good work he was doing, they liked him. But after that, then we started getting Scott Harshbarger, who began a tremendous turn to the left and started politicizing the office. It got worse under Tom Riley. It certainly was on steroids with Martha Coakley, and now we've got Maura Healey. So it's turned from a basic law enforcement organization to right now, with her, she's a political activist. There's no question.
What do you think, Dan? Why do you think there's been no other Republican in that office for 50 years?
Well, just picking up on what my opponent said, you know, Frank Bellotti, he reformed the office. That's what really my campaign is about, to reform the AG's office, and he depoliticized the Attorney General's office. And he made, there was a quote recently in a Herald op-ed that said that Frank Bellotti said it's going to take 40 years before someone screws it up. Well, guess what? It took 30 years before someone really screwed it up. And now I can't answer that. I mean, I certainly, Massachusetts, since, the Tip O'Neills and then the Kennedys came through, became very, aligned with the Democrat Party. But I think the fact that this Attorney General has become so political and is so far over to the left that the Massachusetts people are going to realize that there's room for someone with common sense, that will appeal to the independents, that will appeal to the Reagan Democrats, and maybe even the Kennedy Democrats. That's what my campaign is about. It's about balls and strikes. It's not about politics. It's about balls and strikes. And I think Massachusetts is ready for something like that. We've had the habit of electing Republican governors. I just think people don't pay enough attention, but when people are really starting to see that this Attorney General is so over the top that it's time to bring that thing back to basics.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, let's go to Kevin.
We might have to
Tocci.
rename that bell.
Yeah, this was
The Anthony O'Brien Sr.
That's right, another local Republican, the Anthony O'Brien Sr. Memorial Bell, because I never hit it so many times as have when Tony's been running for office. We may be breaking that record.
Yeah, it's a good
You should
accomplishment.
initial it or something.
I know he's listening.
The Attorney General's office is charged with regulating the state utilities, which includes any rate increases that may be requested. Tell me how important this duty is, and have you had a chance to review past practices of the AG or past administrations? And what might you do differently? Dan.
Oh, this one is something that I'm really passionate about. This Attorney General in 2015 claimed, based on a study, that Massachusetts doesn't need any natural gas. This Attorney General said, we don't need any natural gas pipelines, which thwarted Governor Baker's effort to provide a blended approach to our energy needs. Fast forward to this past winter. There was an unbelievable cold snap you recall, this past winter. And we ran out of energy. Massachusetts ran out of energy, and we had to buy energy from elsewhere. And guess where we bought our energy from? A company that was majority owned by Russia. We bought Russian energy because we went over our needs, contrary to the poor judgment of the sitting Attorney General. And what's going to happen is this coming year, individuals' rates are going to increase. We're going to see a rate increase on our energy with respect to our energy costs. And that's because of poor judgment of the Attorney General. As the Attorney General, I understand energy. I believe energy. I believe in energy. I have a technical background. I understand it very, very well. And my intention is to
My follow-up.
drop rates.
Okay, you got to follow up.
And my follow-up is, so what will, please, and keep it short, what will you do differently in regards to the oversight of these energy companies?
I will use the weight of the Attorney General's office to advocate for natural gas pipelines in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Same question, Jay.
All right. Well, here's the thing with Maura Healey first. Maura Healey grandstands. She does go to the Department of Utility meetings. She makes it a point to post pictures of her on there. And basically what she does is she goes there, but she brings no substance with her. It's basically she's complaining without having substance. In the end, she hasn't done anything. I agree with Dan Shores when he states that we did run out of energy. Absolutely we did. It was publicized everywhere. We ran out of energy, and Maura Healey still did nothing. Even her predecessor, Martha Coakley, did something going against Eversource and filed an action against them when we had, about 5 years ago, when we had that huge storm, and power was out for 5 days. So the point is, she's got to take some kind of action. She won't, but I will. And here's the reason I'm going to do it. I'm probably going to be looking to get reelected. And I don't want these people looking at me and saying, you did nothing? You just showed up and you ranted and raved and did nothing? So I will certainly represent the citizens of Massachusetts at these hearings with substance. Thank you.
Okay, so Kevin started out asking about the regulatory power of the state attorney general. How do you distinguish between unnecessary, burdensome regulations and necessary regulations to keep us all safe and healthy? Jay?
Well, you gotta be a little more specific, because here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the gun ban that she issued. Okay, she just comes right out and issues it. It was her solution to a non-existent problem. No one got shot in Massachusetts. No gun owners went berserk. Nothing at all happened. She said she was doing that in July of 2016 because she was going to get guns off the street. No one's guns got off the street. She didn't even get any of the bad guys' guns. The only thing she did was antagonize the Second Amendment to the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So what is burdensome? When you have no reason at all to do what you did, but you did it for political expediency. I'm going to put an end to that. And on day one, when I get elected as the Attorney General, I will rescind and revoke that July 20, 2016 gun enforcement notice of her and restore back to the citizens of the Commonwealth their rightful gun rights.
Okay.
Dan, how do you distinguish between necessary and unnecessary regulation?
Well, I actually very much agree with what was just said with respect to the Second Amendment. And I think because when you look at the Attorney General, she really, it was really incredible what happened. She overreached with this gun ban. She bypassed the legislature, she bypassed the governor, and that's really, it demonstrated an individual in our government that thought that this individual could do what he or she wanted to without regard to the republic that we live in, that's a violation of our separation of powers. So that was very concerning. And so there, on the one hand, And then on other issues, when we're talking about businesses, what's overburdensome? Well, I think a lot of politicians sit up in the ivory tower and they spin policies without taking into account what small businesses really go through. And I think small businesses get very, very frustrated. A lot of businesses I've talked to on the Cape have been very, very frustrated with a number of the regulations that come down from Beacon Hill. And I think that in order for be a good policymaker, you have to understand what the small businesses go through. So I think overburdensome means that you don't have the perspective of applying the policy.
Let me ask you a follow-up. Give
Yeah.
me an example of a necessary, helpful regulation. Jay.
I can't think of one.
Hot dogs?
Hamburgers?
Okay, so a necessary regulation. I'll give you an example of how it would be. A necessary regulation guides and intends to tell the public how certain statutes are going to be enforced. In other words, what they're looking for. Now, Maury Healy what's that?
Promulgated.
Exactly right. Maury Healy went way over the top when she decided on her own to just ban whole categories of guns, which prior to the time she did that were perfectly legally bought and sold in Massachusetts.
What is a needed, necessary regulation? Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think I certainly think that there are some regulations that we have with respect to the automobile industry. There are the vehicles. I mean, there are necessary regulation in terms of vehicles. The emission standards and making sure that we're having a positive impact on our environment. I think having those in place are helpful. But here's where I touch on environment, and I'm an environmentalist. I believe in preserving the environment. But there is a time where you can sort of go over the top with those types of regulations, and that's really when the small businesses get upset, because it starts to cost them a tremendous amount of money. And so there's a balance there. You need to have a goal, a sensible goal, like, for example, environmental protection, which I believe in, but you also have to balance that with the practical realities of what is happening today and what's happening to our small businesses today. I'm a very strong supporter of small businesses. That's something that I campaigned very hard on when I ran for Congress in the 9th Congressional District, and it's something that I still believe in today. And as the Attorney General, I will bring, as a business owner as well, I will bring those practical viewpoints to the office.
Thank you. You're both attorneys. You're both very intense, very passionate. This is great. I want to give you a quick chance to ask each other a question. And I'll say this as I say at every forum: just a straight question. Don't start with a soliloquy or an insult. Just ask a straight question to your opponent. Dan, ask Jay a question about his candidacy.
Jay, do you believe that if a drug dealer is overdosed, that folks should give that drug dealer Narcan to revive that person?
Absolutely. I think if anybody is in any kind of a coma with respect to an overdose of anything or any kind of situation, I don't think we have to second guess and play God and decide that they're going to die because of something. I say we hit them with Narcan, and then they become a candidate for some kind of mandatory rehabilitation.
Okay. And Jay, a question for Dan.
Dan, have you tried any cases in the Massachusetts trial court system?
I've handled cases that have settled before they've gone to trial. I've appeared before the probate courts, and I've also been in a number of high-profile, multi-billion-dollar federal litigations. But I have not, as I've said before, I have not tried a case before the Massachusetts courts.
Okay. Let's go to the lightning round now, and this is where we ask the questions of the candidates, and it's either a yes or no answer or one or two sentences tops, and the reporter will ask you the question and tell you what kind of an answer they want. Kevin Tocci, lightning round question.
For or against reinstating the death penalty if a suspect is found guilty for taking the life of a police officer?
Two sentences?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with Jay.
I can answer that. Yes, I am. Absolutely.
Okay. Dan.
Yes.
Okay. Charlie.
What are your top 3 news sources? Dan.
Fox News, the Boston Globe, and Facebook.
Okay.
Jay?
Fox News, WXTK, which also has runs ABC News, and also the Boston Herald.
Okay. What do you think about, we talked a little bit about Maura Healey's ban on what they're calling assault weapons. What about your typical people that have had gun permits for, 20, 30 years? Maybe they're target shooting, they're hunting. Do you think just the regular laws that they already have established in Massachusetts, do you think they're strong enough? They need to be lessened, or you think they need to be changed? What are your thoughts on that? Just in 2 sentences, Dan.
I think the gun laws in Massachusetts, well, first of all, the 2016 rifle ban should be revoked because it was unconstitutionally founded. And I think the gun laws need to be simplified so that the law-abiding gun owners can understand whether they're breaking the law or not.
Do you agree with that, Jay?
I do. They have the laws have to be simplified. Actually, right now, they're conflicting. That's why it's very difficult for the prosecution to file a charge, because the laws are conflicting. And secondly, you asked about obtaining permits.
Okay.
They have
Just
to,
one sentence.
It has to be changed because it's subjective. Right now, the police chiefs use a subjective as opposed to an objective
Right,
standard.
and you think that so the system could use some tweaks?
Absolutely.
Okay. Another lightning round question, Kevin.
Important duty of the state attorney general's office, but is often overlooked. Important duty. 1 to 2 sentences.
Dan?
Cracking down on public corruption. This attorney general has not brought any major public corruption case since she's been in office.
Okay. Jay, same question?
Absolutely. It's public corruption. Can you imagine that we need the feds to clean up our house? Trooper Gate is a perfect example. She stayed away from it, leaving Andrew Lelling, the U.S. attorney, to have to clean our house.
Okay. One more quick lightning round question, then we're going to go to closing statements. Charlie?
You guys are both from the Cape. What book would you recommend someone bring to the beach? Dan?
Okay, so just to clarify, I lived in the Cape, and my wife and I moved to Hingham, so we live in Hingham now, but just...
There are beaches in Hingham.
Okay, there are
well,
beaches
let's
in
say
Hingham.
World's End.
Yeah, I'd say one of my... I'd say The Perfect Storm.
Okay. Jay, what's
Jay.
your book for the beach?
See something, say nothing. Absolutely. Phil Henning.
Okay.
Oh, Bill Henning.
All right. Let's go. We're going to go to closing statements now. Remember, keep them to a minute. We're going to reverse the order, and we're going to begin with Dan Shores, and then we're going to go to Jay McMahon. Let's start with Dan. Your closing statement for our listeners here in the race for Attorney General Republican ballot.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we've had I've been on the campaign trail for about a year now, and this is a very important race. So pay close attention to both of my candidacy and my opponent's candidacy, because we have an attorney general who is so political and has used the office and misused the taxpayer funds to such a degree that it really undermines the fundamental law that we have here in Massachusetts. I've come to reform the office. I'm a reform candidate. I'm the only one with that message and vision to get politics out of the office of Attorney General, to return it to what its true purpose is, and that's to enforce our laws to protect our people. This Attorney General has filed 40, 50 lawsuits against the Trump administration. If you really cared, we're in a raging opioid epidemic. If you really cared about people in Massachusetts, you would not be using the resources of the office to pursue these frivolous, politically motivated lawsuits. You should be using those to help people right here in Massachusetts. I've managed litigation teams. I'm a proud graduate of Georgetown Law. I've helped oversee a public budget that exceeds $50 million, larger than the Attorney General's office. I've got a very strong background. I ask for your vote this coming September 4th.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's go to
Ladies
Jay
and
now.
gentlemen, this is a very important case. This is an important office, the Office of the Attorney General. They deal with serious issues, life and death issues. Let's just go a little bit over our backgrounds to let you know where our experience lies. First of all, I got 6 years of military experience. My opponent has none. I've got 6 years of law enforcement experience. My opponent has none. I've been a trial lawyer in Massachusetts since 1988 with thousands of cases in the Massachusetts court system. He's been a patent lawyer in Massachusetts since 2011 with not one trial in the Massachusetts court system, the same court system where the Attorney General operates. I'm a trial lawyer. He's a patent lawyer. There's nothing in patent law that prepares anyone for the work in the Attorney General's office. I want to say this to you. I look forward to being your Attorney General and working to eradicate the opiate crisis in which I have a stake in. I've lost my son to that. Also in public safety, I will be very, very vigilant over your civil rights. And let me just end with this. because it is a serious office, I'm going to promise you and say your public safety, all your rights, and your
Thank you,
guns
Jay.
are safe with me.
Thank you very much, too.
I wish I had rebuttal for that, by the way, but
Two very passionate
I'd
candidates
rather have
here.
myself represent my own background than my opponent. So.
We've got Jay McMahon here. That was his closing statement. We also have Dan Shores, two attorneys running for the state attorney general here as Republicans. And, of course, we'll bring you the results on primary night. This entire forum will be up on our website as well. And we will be running selected cuts from this in 2 days. Tomorrow we're going to run the 4th Plymouth District. We appreciate you joining us tonight. We'll have reporters with you on election night, so we'll let folks know what happened. Thank you very much, Kevin Tocci, Monday Night Talk Show host, Charles Mathewson for asking questions, our own Amy Leonard for doing the timing here. Thank you very much. And, of course, Whitman Hanson, Community Access. I'm Christine James, your moderator. Remember, get out and vote September 4th. If you don't vote, you don't have a voice. Thanks for joining us right here on 95.9 WATD.